Welcome to the Behind the Build podcast with your host, Jeremy Jensen.
Are we recording right now?
We are.
Are we?
All of this is
All
going
good.
into the bloopers at the end.
Bonus reel at the end?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Jeremy, and my favorite color is clear.
All right, topics of discussion. Where do we start? Do we want to start with like the who, what, why, where, and how? Wow.
I think so.
Okay.
I think we just start on why we're looking to do a podcast. We want to do a podcast to just kind of bring some insight and knowledge into our day-to-day lives as builders, what we do in construction. We'd like to have on some of our friends, some of our business associates, different people in finance, in the different trades, and just kind of bring as much education as we can to building.
I guess the way that I became familiar with you guys is just through a third party, if you will. And Alex was actually the one that introduced us. But you guys have been doing a ton of builds in Gregory County. And the more I'm looking, the more I see Jensen Design on houses everywhere. It's incredible. The footprint that you guys are putting down and laying roots down and the homes that you're building for people in and around this area is phenomenal.
It's it's more than building.
It's way more.
We're a construction logistics company by heart. We've got to be the builder. We've got to be the lumber supplier. We're vertically integrated through all different aspects of building, and then just the mobilization of that.
Right.
And once you get those three, the process, where the material's coming from, and mobilization, I mean, we can kind of attack a large area of the state. And I think you're seeing that, from
It's
Gregory,
really cool.
Burke, Winter. I mean,
Right.
up close, you start getting in the Aberdeen area,
Right.
Huron. We go where the need is. I mean, we get the phone calls.
Wow.
And we just try to help our customers the best we can.
Now, one of the reasons that I think is so interesting, and I think you guys have obviously made it a part of your calling card, is when somebody calls, you guys pick up the phone, which already sets you guys apart from the rest of the crowd, so to speak. Because one, basically you keep promises. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got a scope of work that you guys go above and beyond. And what's fun is that your reputation precedes you. So you have people that are reaching out to you because of what they've heard about you from neighbors and from friends and from whatever else.
Yeah. Construction's tough, and it's tougher in our climate. It's tough in South Dakota, where we have all those variables to overcome. And I think the biggest thing is, we always can see the finish line.
Right.
With the struggles, and whether it be weather or wind or snow or rain, whatever it is, seeing that finish line, knowing how to get to the finish line, the process to get there. I think that's something that we grasp very well. We see that.
We had a friend of mine recently just got done with a Jensen Design house, and they were just floored by just the detail, just the finishing touches, the little things, the things that most people would miss, that you or one of your guys would bring up and mention and go, oh, that little thing right there, we're going to clean that up, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. And they were just over the moon by the attention to detail, that it wasn't just you, it was your team, it was your people that brought to the build.
And that's what it is. I've started what we do now. I mean, it started as a one-man show, a one-man company building houses, trimming, and that's where I started, is trimming. That was
really
my professional trade. Yeah, I was a trim carpenter by trade, by myself for several years. Had one employee after some time, but we would go all over the state, and it was fun. I mean, loved trimming. I mean, still my passion absolutely would be like the trim work, the finish work. And that's what I started to get known for. And there was a good friend of mine built a house in Corsica many years ago, and he was one of the first customers that called me to do work, and he had made the comment that we heard that you're the guy to have in there. I was actually referred to by one of my competitors today, oddly enough, but that makes you feel good to get those calls like that. But we still, and my position has changed in the company from going from, the humble trim carpenter, up to what we've become today. And it's, seeing that. And I've been involved in construction now for over 24 years in all different aspects as a builder, general contractor, which we are all of that now. Going through, worked in the lumber industry, doing a lot of different things like that when I was younger. And carpenter, obviously, starting out in the trade as just a labor carpenter, which I think you have to do to be at this level. You have to understand what the process is. Until you are that guy out in the trenches, how do you know?
Right.
So seeing that, but then putting all that together is kind of how where we are at today, where we've seen a need in the market for the full turnkey package. Where you always hear the horror stories of customers having to go out and line all this stuff up and get all this stuff, and from a guy that does it every day, it's a full time and a half job. So to expect a homeowner or a home buyer to do our job, which they may or may not understand it to some extent, and by the way, work their full-time job that gave them the ability to have this new home. And that's where we come into play, is we've got a very good process. We've got very good people in place through our employees or subcontractors to be able to bring these new homes to fruition. And
That's why we answer the phone after hours, because we understand jobs.
and I think that's the biggest probably point, getting back to your question after we went off on a tangent there, getting back to the question of, we still want to pick up the phone. Texting is great. Emailing is great. We do, obviously Zoom calls and stuff, and that's all great too, but it's still, I'd rather have our customers call and talk on the phone and ask questions. So much easier. Come into the office. We have a brick and mortar store. I'll never change that. We've got some cool things in place where you can do a lot online now, and that's good. For what we reach out in our, quote unquote territory, and South Dakota is a big rural area. It's great things can be done online, but you still have to have that point-to-point interaction. To be able to sit down at a desk and go through a process.
Just talking about that a little bit, it reminds me too of the amount of person-to-person communication that you guys do, the amount of effort that you go in order to be able to get folks the information on like updates. And here's the process, and here's what the expected timeline is, and all of these little things that ends up lowering the anxiety for the customer is kind of a big deal. It's easy to be impersonal when it's kind of a product is the output of the service, right? And it's really easy to become impersonable, so to speak. And of course, there's horror stories in every industry, but that's again another thing of what our friends, when they just finished purchasing a Jensen home, was just the amount of communication, the amount of info that they got from you and your people. They didn't feel left out of the build. They felt like they actually got to be a part of the build. It wasn't just like, oh, someday there'll be something here that we can just show up, and then if we have a problem, then here's a phone number, and maybe someday someone will pick it up.
Service is huge.
Man.
Service after the sale is huge. We want that house to look nice for you for a long time, generations. And the way homes are being built now, it's the technology in a house is unfathomable. And it's, it ain't like a house for 20 years, nothing changed. Now it's every couple years, there's something new. There's something cool. These things are going to last a long time now. And we want to make sure it all keeps looking nice for our customers.
It's almost a legacy piece.
It is.
Yeah.
It very much is. That reminds me of, it's funny, this is a little clip, and we use it in a lot of our advertising. It was actually, I heard it from my dad, and not to outpace my generation or anything like that. And if you're listening to the podcast and you're from the Huron area, you've probably heard the name Harvey Gap before. Used to be an owner. Actually, I grew up down the road from him at my mom and dad's house where I grew up in Huron. And he used to own, and I hope I'm getting this story right, and I apologize if it's not to who was ever listening, but he used to own a mobile home park in Huron. And when my mom and dad were first married, they lived there. And apparently my dad called Harvey one day and wanted to know if he had any mobile homes for sale. And it was something of this sort. And Harvey said to him, these are not mobile homes, these are homes. And, I remember that, and I had to be a young kid when I heard that. So that's funny, and that's always kind of stuck with me, and we kind of use that as our motto today. When Jensen Design Build, we don't build houses, we build homes. Well, and that's what we try to give to our customer. These are not houses. These are homes. People are living here. You're going to have, young children, grandkids, whatever. They're going to remember coming to that house. They're going to remember growing up in that house and just how it is living. So it's funny, some of the things that we bring with us into the company now, just to kind of set the stage. We don't build houses.
Right.
We build homes.
Right. Wow. And so not only is the product a legacy piece, but you're also kind of bringing some legacy into almost the bones, the DNA of the business. So obviously you've got some legacy that you bring to the construction trade. You've got some great people around you.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about some of those folks?
It's all based on our team. We all have the same vision now. I mean, everybody's moving forward. We're progressing, and I'm very happy with that. How we're being able to go out, in the economy, and we're helping anything from residential, home buyers. We do a lot of multifamily building, the townhomes and that sort of thing. But it is a team that makes any business successful.
Right.
It's not me. I mean, I do my part the same as, my foreman does his part, and so on and so forth. But it takes and I've used the term before, the proverbial army.
Right.
And it does. It's, there's hundreds and hundreds of people involved in home building and the different steps and checks and balances of the world. So we would not be who we are today if it wasn't for the team that I'm surrounded with.
Wow.
And we all do our part. We don't have, one individual that's better than the other or vice versa.
Sure.
Everybody has, their specialties, obviously, and we bring it all together to kind of bring the company to fruition, I guess.
Sure. Well, and you had kind of mentioned too, like the economy as it stands right now is really in kind of a funky place. There's tariffs, and then maybe there's not so much tariffs, and there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And so, as at the time of this recording, I'm also in a service-based industry or business, and so it almost feels like folks are kind of clutching their pearls a little bit, and they're kind of worried, and that worry is translating in kind of a contraction of sorts. And so people are kind of unsure about some things. How has the current economy, did you still, usually in the spring there's kind of this big flush of building and projects and things like that. Has that continued along that sense on the kind of the building space, or has that also had an effect?
It does have an effect to some extent. And I think what we've seen more in the building industry is just a shift of buyer, so to speak.
Sure.
And that's, and I think that goes, and holds true for any type of business where you need to be able to shift with the economy. If you did one thing forever, you'd probably be out of business in
Right.
2 years. So a lot of it is just following the market need. You got to have your thumb on the pulse, so to speak, of building. But it changes so much, and it all comes back around. I mean, I've been in and around the building industry for over 24 years. I'd mentioned, you see these swings. I mean, everybody that's been around for a while went through, 2008, the financial crisis, whatever a guy wants to call it. And there's been ups and downs. Farming's the same way. I mean, you have ups and downs. Construction is no different. So it's just kind of shifting with where the demand is at. It is, establishing where and what type of homes are needing to be built. I mean, we were building, percentage-wise, 5 years ago, we were building more, single family, mid-range custom homes, whatever a guy wants to call it.
Yep.
And that was probably, and we were doing, everything we do now, just in different segments. But today, now we're probably doing more of the mid-range, maybe smaller platform homes. We're doing a lot of the multifamily stuff, and that's trying to hit more of a price point. But in turn of that, we're seeing a lot of the larger homes too. Maybe some more established buyers of means, if we want to call it that, are at a point where financially they're okay. Doing those bigger projects. So it's just shifting. If 2 or 3 years down the road again, I'm sure we'll be 180 degrees opposite of what we're talking now.
Yep.
But the easy comment to that question is, we've always been busy.
Right.
We've always had projects going. It's just, again, kind of keeping your thumb on the pulse, the temperature reading of the market, where we need to shift our building practices. We're seeing a lot more of the younger families coming back around this year. I'll say that. Last couple years with the interest and everything like that, that was a little higher than we were probably used to. And cost of building has an impact on that as well. But we've seen some of them mid-range buyers kind of pulling the reins back a little bit. But now that interest rates are coming down, I think everybody's generally established that, hey, the cost of building is probably not going to go down. And that was a big question we got all the time. I mean, every buyer that would come in, Jeremy, what do you see the cost of building? Is it going to come back down? My opinion, probably not, and it can't hardly.
Right.
We've all kind of gone through the payroll,
You're right.
Cost of living, and so on and so forth. Payroll's not going to come down. You're not going to, have employees taking pay cuts by any means. So, that's established. That's going to continue to appreciate. Just the cost of doing business is also not going down. Anybody that's paying taxes and insurance will constitute that. Insurance, again, the cost of building going up, replacement cost, insurance costs going up. That's not getting any cheaper. Property taxes the same way. So, I think when you start laying some of them points out, the light bulb turns on. It's like, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. So, building a house, historically, if you look back, it charts 50, 60 years in the past. We're always kind of on a track of about a 3% appreciation in the cost of building. And you can take that back quite a ways. Now we had a little ripple, in the early 2020s where we had, that usually we would set our clocks, January 1st, the cost of building is going up 3%. And it's been like that forever. I mean, 1 year might be 1%, it might be 4%, but the average is about 3%. There was about an 18-month stretch there when the cost of building went up about 60% in 18 months. We took 30 years of price increases in a year and a half. That's what's got a lot of buyers curious as to what's happening to the cost of building. If you have not checked, if you checked 5 years ago
Right.
and you came back today and wanted to build that house, it might be close to double on what you're paying before. And it's really tough to digest that and say, how can that be?
Yep.
Well, if you were in our world for about that 18-month to 2-year cycle where you were getting quoted lumber or whatever it would be, and well, how long do I got? As soon as we hang up the phone, what do you mean? If you don't say yes when we hang up the phone and you're going to call back and it's going to cost you more.
Yep.
So, and we're past that. I mean, it's not that to the extent now, even with, the talk of the tariffs, personally, I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. Most, the materials that are already in our border, within our, that's already set.
Yep.
And that's where we look at what we do on the building and commodity side, with the lumber, the building materials. We try to have enough material with our buying power on hand to hedge some of that market fluctuation. We know there's going to be market fluctuations, but we'll try to inventory enough material, commodities, that we don't have to go through those waves. So, and that's how we're able to set a cost, meet our costs, sign a contract, and the buyer and their financial institution or whoever it might be, they can be confident that when they get to the end of the project, that is going to be their price.
You bet. Final price.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And then too, one of the things that I think makes you guys kind of unique or different really is that you really streamline the process, not just internally for your own business, but you also kind of have an entire program centered around helping. You were just talking a little bit about kind of first-time home buyers or new entrants into the market, and you have a whole program centered around that.
Correct.
Which is incredible because it's such a daunting process when you're trying to buy a home for the first time.
Yeah.
That's a daunting thing to try and do if you don't have a background in it, if you've never seen it done before.
Yep.
And so you have a whole piece about that really makes a nice, easy on-ramp for that first-time home buyer.
Yeah, buying a house is an investment, and probably the biggest investment you'll ever make in your life. And all of our customers, and not just first-time home buyers, but we like to sit down with them and actually do some financial planning. Now, we're not financial advisors, take that for what it is, but we can discuss information in general terms. When you're buying a house, it's probably not going to be the last home that you ever purchase in your life. It might get you through 10 years, it might get you through 5 or 2, or who knows what the situation is. But you want to make money on that house. So we want to look at the house that's good for you today. We want to make sure that you'll be able to market that house correctly and, make a profit and roll that over into the next home. So we look at a lot of different scenarios on, interest rates, and that's where we bring in some of our lending team to look at some of those options individually with each buyer and get them set up where they're comfortable with a payment and they're not going to get into proverbial trouble on a house. We've had, customers come in and, everybody wants a new house. Everybody wants a new car and a new pickup and a new house and so on and so forth. But, it's sometimes having the discussions with those potential buyers, maybe it's not the right time for you. I don't ever want to build a house for somebody that they get into something so deep and over their heads that they can't afford to go out with their wives for a steak dinner on a Friday night because they got a house payment coming up. So we want to definitely look at stuff like that. And that's where we look at, and we ask our customers to be very honest and upfront with us the way we are with them. Where do you feel comfortable? Let's talk about budget. There's different scenarios we can run through. We've got some spreadsheets we can kind of put in some numbers and some scenarios, if we want to call it that. And buying a home might not be the right choice at the time. It might be, this might not be the thing for you right now, but we've got some good contacts. Maybe let's try to find some like an older home, something, pre-owned, so to speak.
Sure.
And let's put that process into play with something like that. And that goes, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that in a lot of the smaller communities that we work with too, that we're trying to open up affordable housing options. And I know we're kind of going off, and I think the point of the podcast was, or getting this started was to try to have some of these discussions. Not really knowing where it's going,
Sure.
but to be able to open up some of those conversations. Let's talk about affordable housing. What's going on in the market? Let's talk to some of the people that are actually in the construction business, the finance guys, the guys that are working in the banks. Let's talk to some of the subcontractors. As developers, what are we seeing with land and cost?
Wow.
I think we want to put together a program that it really doesn't have so much of a table of contents, but let's just open some discussions into the building world.
Sure.
And it could be for anybody that's looking to build a house, buy a house, whatever. That's great, but just somebody that wants to know about maybe the investing into real estate. So I think we're going to discuss a lot of different topics, and I just don't think we really had anybody in the area that was doing a program such as this.
I think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be really interesting to see, to your point, there just isn't a lot of folks that are taking the time to be able to communicate and so to speak, pull back the curtain
Yep.
of being able to peer into that world, because there's so many moving parts. There's so much complexity. It's just kind of daunting, but it's just going to be really interesting to see those conversations as they unfold, and kind of get a firsthand perspective from kind of each player that has their part of that ecosystem.
Yep. I think unless you're involved in every day, and I think that's maybe a topic that we're trying to bring up, is what is really involved in home building? How many people are really involved in that? And it's just mind-boggling the amount of people that it takes to actually build a house. It's I've used the adage before. Building a house is probably 20% of building a house. The other 80% is logistics and financing and commodities and so on and so forth. There's so much that goes on, and everything is just as important as anything else. There's nothing that's takes priority over one thing or another. But there are so many people, so many businesses and entities that are involved in home building. And I think once those discussions start to happen, it'll be more obvious when you're driving through town.
Sure.
Okay, now I kind of understand what they do, and I understand this section or whatever it may be.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. Is there anything else either that you want to cover in terms of a topic? Is there anything that we're missing that we should be covering? What do you think?
I think cut it up and
Okay.
do something like that. I might throw a plug in here, Jensen Design Build. Yeah.
No.
Again, I think what we were trying to accomplish is get a communication forum for us in the building industry. And Cole, I know you understand that. You're in the building industry as well with your corporation, and I think that's what we want to do. It's just a little insight as to what actually goes on. So with the podcast, Behind the Build with Jensen Design Build, we're going to be able to introduce just a lot of the general community of what we do as builders. So if anybody wants to reach out, like we talked, a phone call is the best. You can call our office, Jensen Design Build, area code 605-990-4800. We always invite, if you ever want to stop at the office, tour some homes, talk about a home project, 801 Quincy Street here in Mitchell, right on Interstate 90. just on the south side of Interstate 90 between the two exits. You can also check out the webpage, jensendesignbuild.com. You can reach out to us on there, set up an appointment. We've got a calendar app on there you can take a look at as well. And obviously the social media, which I think is probably the best way to kind of keep tabs on us. What's new, different communities we're working in. Available model homes, multifamily, anything from purchasing to rental properties.
Wow.
We've got we kind of check all the boxes for what our buyers, and I think that's our biggest goal is when we have customers or potential customers come in, we want to have a product for them within the realm of housing. So.
Well, fantastic.
This is amazing. I'm super pumped about this, and I think this is going to be something that's very well needed in the area. And
well, I think this is going to be a really fun thing. The setting's great. I mean, and obviously we've got 2 more mic slots there.
Yeah.
And so 2, like that camera obviously is what we're starting with right now. But if this turns out where I think it's going to go, we're going to end up probably needing to go to more of a wired setup.
Yeah.
And so we would end up having at least a minimum of 2 for like a camera, B camera, or an A roll and a B roll. And then you can cut between those 2. You can do that wirelessly. And ideally, we'll have one central kind of hub or point like that can drive these dynamic condenser mics. But then ideally the goal would be is that you've got somebody sitting in the back that can switch between the feeds on the fly. And it's really simple now. It used to be a lot of money to put together a production thing like that. And now it's just not. It's really doable. It's still kind of complicated, but the real magic is in the editing. The hardware has come leaps and bounds. And so it's really doable now because you already have the setting. I mean, you're in the perfect trade to be able to host something like this anyway. Your attention to detail, the setting, the buildings, all of this is built for this.
I think we should tell everybody where we're located, and we'll have to take a tour at some point through the program. But we're actually out in my original office, the original showroom and office, located just outside of Mitchell, where we started Jensen Design Build. Where we're at today now, this is just kind of a private office I use for different business aspects, but this is where our customers used to come, and we had a small showroom and a selection sheet area where people could pick out their homes. All the drafting happened out here, all the construction logistics. So, starting from a small meager 24 by 28 office. Now we're in our third facility, our second ready-built facility that we've expanded into.
Wow.
So gone from a, meager office and shop setup, and now we're, our main headquarters is located on 7 acres in Mitchell, on our 7-acre production facility and beyond. So.
Wow. Yeah, this it's such a neat story kind of to be able to look back. I just got done reading a book called The Gap and the Gain, and basically a way to stay out of a negative mindset is to be able to look backwards and see how far this has come. It's kind of fun to be in this room or in this building, with this being the location of the start.
Yeah.
How did it get to this point? You kind of hit it a little bit, but go into that a little more of just, you never thought it was going to blow up to this big of a company.
So let me ask the question, and then we'll do that.
Okay.
So how does Jensen Design Build get to where it is now? How does it start here? Take us through the play-by-play of how it starts here, and then now you're right along the road you're right along I-90.
I could not imagine a better location for a brick and mortar headquarters. I mean, just the amount of traffic that we see that see us is I would have never imagined it would be as big as it has become, and our growth that we still have. But back to your question, how do we get to the point that we're at today? I think a lot of it is, and it is, just meeting the needs of the customer. And I think that's true for any business. I mean, you look at your own life, you look at what you're buying, what do I see? What does the market need? I'd like to buy this, whatever it might be. How do I bring that to the market? And I think that's kind of where we have progressed to is, what is not being brought to the market. And it's not, simply just being a home builder. It's, how can we wrap everything together from the logistics to the actual construction, answering questions. I think that's what a lot of it is. We do building to such a high volume extent, considered high volume in South Dakota.
Oh, yeah.
That, if I was a customer, I just want to talk to somebody that knows what's going on.
Right.
I want to make one stop. I want to have
Yep.
one guy to call type of thing.
Yep.
And I don't want to have 4 different entities, whatever it might be.
Right.
So, I mean, one-stop shopping is what we really portray.
Wow. Wow.
And more than that is, meeting the needs of the communities. Like these communities came to, you're the biggest visionary that I've ever met. And the way you're able to put things together, you solve problems better than anybody. The we'll figure it out thing is like you've taken that to the extreme.
And additional things that we can get into are different topics, and we don't want to do everything in one shot by any means. But I think different discussions that I want to have is what are we seeing in the smaller communities? What problems are smaller communities having right now? And it's growth. One thing our company does is we try to mitigate the growth, the job creation. How can we help with that?
Sure.
Is it housing? Is it commercial construction? Is it helping a local business owner that needs to hire, attract employees? And housing is what steps. And we have kind of a motto we've always kind of used within community development, and the best title that we give ourselves is we are the guy, or we are the entity that sits in between the chicken or the egg. When these smaller communities are trying to expand and grow, there isn't a right or a wrong answer. Do you need new business to attract new people to town?
Sure.
Or do you need new homes
Yeah.
to attract those new businesses?
Yep.
Both answers are right and both answers are wrong.
Right.
But we need to be that entity in the middle
Sure.
to facilitate that. And that's where we reach out to a lot of the smaller communities, and we work with different medical facilities of the world of, do you have open positions? Are you trying to grow this segment in your business, whatever it is? Let me know.
Yep.
We can go out and facilitate. You've got somebody to hire. Perfect. Let's get your potential employee. Let's get them in front of me.
Sure.
We will figure out the housing things.
Yep.
Somehow we will figure out the housing.
Wow.
So,
And that's really unique. You just don't see that at all. I mean, that your organization is probably the first I've ever seen that really goes beyond just brick and mortar, stick construction, where goes beyond the actual build itself in order to figure out the logistics of what does the community itself need.
exactly.
And it really is an economic impact piece that I think most people aren't looking for, but once it happens, it really kind of takes the blinders off, and everybody kind of wakes up and goes, "Oh, it's almost like it's a shock to a system." Folks just aren't used to that, but once they see it, it's hard for people to then not unsee it almost. And it's really interesting just to see the vitality and the life that it injects into a main street. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, we've worked with smaller communities. You're from a smaller community that we do a lot of business in, and just the growth that they've seen in the last 18 months to 2 years is phenomenal. I mean, It's huge.
Huge.
The amount of industry that comes to town.
Yep.
Business breeds business. Big business breeds smaller business.
Yep.
Everything from coffee shops to service industries. I mean, you name it. Everybody benefits, and it's everybody working together, to bring those ideas to fruition.
No, that's right.
So that's where we try to be the middleman on a lot of that. We can help facilitate a lot of things that happen on the housing end or helping businesses to grow in that aspect.
Wow.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Behind the Build podcast with your host, Jeremy Jensen.